Welcome to The PA is In, the show created by PAs for PAs, where codependency with your supervising physician is a thing of the past, optimal team practice is the future, and physician associate has taken the place of physician assistant as the professional title of choice. I'm Tracy Bingaman, and I'm obsessed with redefining what success as a PA looks like and what it feels like. Here you'll find the mindset shifts, systems, and processes I use to escape healthcare burnout and integrate my work into my life. Work-life balance is a myth, and an integrated life where you thrive professionally, not a balancing act, is the goal here. My mission is to help you to grow into a unicorn PA who loves their job, has abundant energy, time to spare, and work-optional financial freedom. The PA is in. Welcome back to another episode of The PA is In. Today, we have a guest that checks two boxes that we have never had on the show before: primary care, and someone who launched from primary care into working in industry as a speaker and as a medical science liaison. I am so excited to introduce you to, thanks to LinkedIn, my new friend, Alex Childs. He's going to tell us all about primary care, his scuff with burnout, and how going back to school for his doctorate led to some pivots in his career that have reinvigorated his passion and his joy for taking care of patients and working in medicine. Without further ado, here he is, Alex Childs. Alex, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Super excited about it. So appreciate it.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about you and your career path, where you are, and what you're doing today.
Okay, so I'm a doctorate level PA, and I'll kind of tell you about that journey a little bit. But I'm in family medicine in Utah, and it's awesome. It's great. But I started the PA path in Florida, so almost coast to coast. And the PA school was great. And I actually never thought I would be in primary care, family medicine. So it was kind of a surprise journey to here. I was interested in surgery and rotated, for those that are familiar with Utah will know, Huntsman Cancer Institute. Very, very good, on top of research and all that kind of stuff. And I rotated there, and it was wonderful and fun, but it just didn't pan out. And I had a different rotation in family medicine with like a family friend, and he was so good. And I remember asking him, even as a student, I remember this. I said, "What can you not do here?" And he just said, "Whatever you don't feel comfortable with." Of course, there's some limitations and whatever, but that's what really started me into family medicine, and it's turned out great for me so far. But a little background on that story is, you jump in and you have RVU goals, and there's probably going to be some PA students listening, and they're wondering what's an RVU. And just know that you'll learn all about that later. But you know, they had a lot of RVU goals, very high, and always obtained them. No big deal, but it was a lot. And for me, all of a sudden it didn't feel so fun. And I think, like a lot of providers, kind of feeling some elements of burnout. And that was just so foreign and strange for me. But that's what I can pinpoint to where I started getting kind of outside the box and realizing that there's more out there. And maybe you want me to go in that now, but that was the turning point where it started feeling more heavy. And I remember a research article talking about burnout, and they specified that one of the common feelings is people feel more like objects than people. And it's so true in a way, where you just kind of feel narrowed in, and it doesn't feel normal. So that's where things started to turn and open up for me, maybe oddly, instead of like regressing down.
Yeah. So I would love you to tell us, what you love about primary care. So, as someone who has never practiced medicine, only surgery, has never been in primary care since I did my rotation in PA school, in my mind, primary care providers are so overworked. They're overburdened. Every time someone writes follow up with PCP, it's more work for you to do. So, tell us how you sort of manage that and what you like about it, because you really do seem like you enjoy it. So, talk us into it. Why is it so great?
Yeah, so it's true what most people think. It's a lot, and but I think that's true for specialists as well. I assume it's a lot for everybody. So I kind of just take that as the norm for all of us. What I like about it is the variety. So if you think about the ER, some are very into ER, all the emergencies and the go, go, go right now, right now. I think family medicine has variety like that, but it's not so critical and high intensity. Sometimes it is. I have patients in that we've called the ambulance because they're having a heart attack right then. But of course, it's a variety. I think that's the obvious answer. But where I practice is it's called Grantsville. It's where I grew up. It's my hometown. And so I know half the people before they walk in. There's so and so, and I know them from this and from that. And I get the question a lot. Do you feel comfortable with that? Is that okay? Do you not see these people that you know? And I think initially it felt maybe awkward, but when I see them more, I just realize I do the same thing, for them, honestly, and it's been fine. So what I like about it, where I am particularly, it's a rural, small town. I like it because I know the people, I get the variety, and I help them on all aspects of their life from birth to the end, and I like it.
Yeah, it's so refreshing. And that is ultimately what the PA profession was designed to do. Like many providers are not existing in that space of primary care, but truly the need was for primary care providers to do exactly what you're doing day in and day out to make sure patients are getting what they need from you and also to who they need to see if they do need to refer out to a specialist. So, how did you get comfortable? It is just this vast amount of knowledge. And so you came out of school, you went into primary care. How did you know what you knew? How did you know what you didn't know? When do you refer out? How does that work?
Yeah, it's tough. And I think everyone's journey is differently. So up to date helps if you need a reference. I started in California, and back then, so many years ago, we had supervising physicians. I won't say it again. And I had three at that time. So I think the most important thing initially, probably anywhere, is just your support. If you can build your support, and now, years later, I have my cardiology friends, I have my neurology friends, I have my surgery friends. And when something comes up, I know that it's hard to get a quick consult right away, but it's so helpful um, for us guys in primary care where we're like, you know, not quite sure if this is so urgent or whatever. So yeah, just kind of building that system and of course experience because it's different for everybody to get you comfortable.
Yeah, you cannot put too much emphasis on having a good support system. People, whether in your office or someone that you can call. I, for a couple of years in my current practice, was a department of one. So it wasn't that I was just, I was the only one doing what I was doing. And I did have some surgeons I could talk to if there was something out of question. But now we have three people. And there's always another provider in my department at the office at the same time that I am there. And it's not that I need them to do what I'm doing, but sometimes I'll look at something and say, this is what I'm thinking about doing. Is this what you would do? Would you do this differently? Would you use this or this? Like, if you're on the fence, just having someone say, like, yeah, you can't go wrong either of those, or no, I wouldn't do that. I would do it this way is so, so invaluable to patients and also to me growing as a provider. Just having someone like, oh, one time I did this and it did not work well, or one time I did this and it was really great. So you should try it this way instead. It's so, so helpful.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, you have to have that support system. Um, those solo providers out there, good job. It's tough, but yeah, you can still do it that way. I think a recommendation is if as they're rotating, right, as you're rotating through and you're connecting with people, you'll come across those that you can still reach out to when you're solo and just call them up.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So tell me more about this pivot. So you were in a position where you started sort of feeling like not as connected to your patients. Maybe you were sort of turning out to try and get those RVU goals, whether that was compensation or just you're one of these people that when there's a goal, you try to hit it. Um, and it sounds like you were like on the fringes of burnout, sort of getting to the point where you maybe weren't having as much joy or fulfillment working in the position that you were in. Many people in that position would look for a change in terms of changing jobs. A lot of people will go from primary care to a specialty, but you didn't do either of those things. So tell us what you did do when you were feeling burned out to sort of reignite your spark.
Okay. So yeah, I really want to walk through this process because I think what we hear a lot is, we feel burnout, we know why. We're overworked, we're stressed, things happen, but then all of a sudden it goes away, and I've always appreciated the walkthrough. So this was my walkthrough and how it happened, and there has to come I think a point where something like this happens, and you step back and start to analyze and think maybe I should do it different than the way I am. Otherwise, you'd never change. So, kind of got that perspective point and just started thinking that way. Well, what else can I do? What else can I do as a PA? And as you go through school, at least my experience, it's just so short, and they don't have time to go through every option of what you can do as a PA, such as you know connecting with maybe like a resort somewhere and being the medical personnel there. How fun
Sign
would
me
that
up.
be?
Yeah.
you know, that didn't even cross my mind as an option. But as I started kind of thinking about how I could expand and utilize this degree, I actually came across what my mentor, I call my mentor, I'm sure he would happily accept, Mark Hyde, PhD, PA. And I came across what he was doing, and I've just kind of followed him. He brought me back from Florida to Utah, and I followed him, kind of through his career, actually. And I found out that he was an MSL, medical science liaison. And so I reached out to him, and he said, let's meet, let's talk about it. And he just kind of told me about what he does. And I was just like, didn't know this was a thing at all. Industry, in other words. And from there, decided because what percent of MSLs are PAs, or what percent have a master's degree? And there's this really neat guy out there. I'm sure you know about him, Samuel Dyer. Um, and they did a survey. I think I have it here. Master's degrees are only 17% of MSLs. 17%. And the rest of them have Ds basically associated. They're a Pharm D, PhD, whatever. And so talking with Mark, we kind of, decided, and I remember asking him, is it worth it for me to go and get a doctorate degree? Because I'm not going for a PhD. That's a long journey, and that's fine for someone. But the doctorate degree gives you a D, and so that's kind of where I was thinking of um, a trajectory into industry in some aspect, maybe MSL. And so I started my doctorate program. And that really opened up a lot of neat things. University of Lynchburg, very good, fantastic. And that's where that pivot took me into my doctorate program. Now, just having something else in mind and staying put helps those things go away. So starting a new development professionally and opening my mind to new opportunities that are going to come down the road, all of a sudden things started feeling just fine back in primary care where I've been. And that's what really helped me significantly. There's other things too I'll share later, but that's what led me kind of toward that path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds a lot like hope, right?
Yeah, yes, having hope.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds a lot like you were like, "Oh, I realized that where I am is not necessarily the one and only place that I can be. It's not the one place I can make an impact, and that you're moving towards something." So, when you wish it was different, but you're not taking steps to make it different, you feel hopeless and resentful and stuck and burned out. But when you say, "Okay, I see this thing and I'm going to take some steps to move towards it," you start to feel better, even though you're not even really that much closer, right? You just like looked up programs and applied, and you already start to feel better about pursuing something because you're no longer just sort of like wishing things would change. You're actually taking action. So,
Yeah. I just love these people where I'm at, and I don't want to leave them. But had to find a way that would work, for you. And so that's what led me that way.
I was so excited to hear that AAPA had upgraded their signature job board, PA Job Source, into an interactive map-based system that allows you to literally zoom into your targeted geographic region and communicate directly with PA employers. The PA Job Source map connects you to the entire landscape of PA jobs. They've got 50,000 PA employers and counting. You can follow a geographic market or employer site and receive alerts when new jobs are posted. You can even send a DM to that employer you've had your eye on for months. But here's the best news. PA Job Source is still completely free to AAPA members. Log in today to map out your future at aapa.org/PA Job Source. So you were working full time and pursuing this doctorate, and oh, by the way, living your life outside of medicine. How was that?
Going skiing when I could, absolutely. Yeah, so I think most will do that with their doctorate, and they tailor the program that way. So you just work, and then you get home and you work some more. We're kind of used to that, but it really was not that bad because it was what was helping me significantly at the time, and I had something I was going towards. So it was a quick 1 year, and then what happened was once I got into that program, they came across the question of, okay, what do you want to focus your research on? What do you want to write your paper about? And the topic's up to you. Well, I'm in primary care, and one thing that I call my mentor, Mark Hyde, mentioned is, you know what? Even in primary care, you can have a subspecialty. So maybe in surgery, your specialty is like, I don't know what you did, like the shoulder. Primary care can do that too. And so my subspecialty and what became my love and what I love to talk about, I could talk about it all night, is pharmacogenetics and genetic testing and how to implement that into primary care, because most PAs are open to it. They think it's important. And yes, it's all good and dandy, but how do you do it the right way? And what do you do with results? And so through that program, this subspecialty started developing, and I started implementing it into practice.
So it's like someone is coming in to see you and you review their medical history and you identify them as high risk. Are you doing this for everyone? Who gets testing? How does that work?
Okay. Well, I think first, my support system. Okay, so because then just to throw this in new, by the way, no one was doing this over on I call it this side of the mountain, because you have Salt Lake and Huntsman. They've been doing that before, there was a house out here. So I called them and started building the support system. I think if you want to implement something special, bring in people who are doing this already and just start modeling that way. And so I talked to them and figure out, how they're going about it. So yes, that's what we're doing here now. And every patient, and it's something we do already. What's your family history? And so when you get a family history that says, well, my sister had pancreatic cancer, what do you do with that information? And you can, just note it down and maybe, keep eyes if they get a CT scan or something, or you can be much more proactive. And if you do it the right way, it's simple and easy, and you can literally save lives in a special way for them, but for their family and siblings, it's been great. One patient, just a quick story. Her family history was breast cancer, so very classic. BRCA1 and 2, we know those genes really well for markers. But how many more markers are there? I think most of us couldn't answer that, and then tomorrow would be different because they just keep researching. So we ran her testing, and I'll tell you kind of that setup, but she had a marker for the ATM gene, which puts her increased risk, not for just breast, but for pancreatic cancer as well. And on your report, you don't have to become this special genetic counselor all of a sudden, but they give you very specific guidelines on what to do with that information. And we followed that. So she had just had her mammogram maybe 6 months before this, and it looked great. We get her genetic testing back. They recommend MRI of the breast. We do it. Lo and behold, a mass. And it was just, kind of this moment where it kind of, I was not happy for her that she had a mass, but I was happy that we did it and we found it and all that kind of thing. And it's turned out to be okay. But it's just one of those success stories of implementing something extra that you can do that's pretty simple to really make an impact.
Hey guys, it's Tracy here. I just wanted to give you a little update. So after we finished recording, Alex sent me a message and say, hey, I want to correct myself a little bit of something I said on the podcast episode. That patient that I mentioned who had tested for hereditary cancer actually did have a finding on her preliminary mammogram and others as he was reviewing her case after we hung up the call. So, he said there was some shadowing of a small millimeter asymmetry and that the MRI gave a defined size of the millimeters of that mass, but she did have the ATM gene, putting her at higher risk. So I just wanted to put that out there. I love when someone sort of reflects on their conversation and says, hey, I could have said that differently, or I could have made that more clear. So I just wanted to just insert this into the episode. Okay, back to our discussion. Yeah. And does insurance pay for this for people who have family history or concerns? I'm sure everyone listening just loves to deal with insurance companies. So tell us about that.
That's the number one question. I never vouch for insurance, so that's the question I always get. And I always say I never vouch. Sometimes they do, right? Sometimes they don't. But for $250 or so, not so bad. But not everybody can do that. And there's a burden of cost. But when it's weighing on people's minds enough, at some point, it doesn't have to be right away, but at some point it ends up being quite worth it.
Yeah. So you started implementing this and now you're also working in industry. So how did that transition work from you being a provider who is sort of the consumer of the thing and providing it to the patients versus educating others and, getting out there and telling other people that these options and testing exist?
Yes. Okay. So there's two genetic things that I guess that I've brought in, and being in. Okay. Well, so one of them is hereditary cancer risk testing, and I don't like to be too specific about which group, but then when I don't be specific, everyone always asks me, why weren't you specific? And they want to know which group is best. And I will just mention somebody that if you're really into it and you want to know fantastic information, look up Julie Eddington. And listening to some things she says just brought to my mind the importance of this concept. The group that you are using actually does matter. Some and I don't want to put down any group or start up anything. I think it's great generally. However, to differentiate, for example, the missense genes versus the actual genes and how accurate the tests are, being false positive, or so the group that you go with matters. And so I will say for hereditary cancer risk screening, one group that I've found that has been just fantastic, and maybe I'm a little biased, but I think it's true because they're based out of Utah, is Myriad. They are so good. And I think Tempest AI is another good group. If people are really searching, they just acquired Ambry. Okay, so that's one group, or that's one side of the genetic testing. But the other side is so exciting, and probably even more exciting for me is the pharmacogenetic side. And that's where I've transitioned into industry because have just used so many groups, and I could just list you off a bunch of companies of who does this. But after a while, and really trying to search out and connect, really through LinkedIn and different groups, and people are so open and willing a lot of times to help you. But connecting with those guys and working with their MSLs and getting up to speed on their tests, came across Genomind, and really before I became a speaker for Genomind, I'll tell you how that happened. They were my favorite. They were they're so in depth and detailed in their report, and I wish I could show you and give you that presentation because the amount of detail that you get with their PGX report is fantastic. And after a while and working with them, they just kind of offered and reached out to me and said, you know what, Alex, why don't you be a speaker for us? And I just was so happy. It's like, yes, I'd love to. I'm already doing it. In fact, I've given two presentations, one at the hospital and another one local already about this. So yeah, might as well join forces and advocate further about it. So that's how that happened.
So pretend the listener is like me, who only does surgery and does not know how medicines or genes work. Can you explain what pharmacogenetics is? Like, what does that mean? Like, what information are we getting from this test?
I know. Yeah. So half the time it's pharmacogenomics or pharmacogenetics. And I don't get hung up on that, but I always say pharmacogenetics, PGX testing is simply a cheek swab in their mouth, and it gives a report then on genes that everybody has. You have them, I have them, we all have them, studied genes. And by the way, it's not a 100%, it's not like a UA. It's still in development. It's not a recommendation across the board. It has to be taken in light of the provider's knowledge and treatment. And so there's that. But it gives you a report on two things from those genes. One of them is pharmacogenetics. So that's a set of genes. And then you have the other testing side is pharmacodynamics. And the way I remember it and explain it to my patients, the one with the D in it, pharmacodynamics, is because it has a D and drug has a D, it's what the drug does to the body. And so the information that you get from those type of genes, the pharmacodynamic genes, is going to tell you a lot to do with side effects and like what the medication is going to do to you. Okay, the other side, pharmacogenetics, is the opposite, what the body is doing to the medication. So it's metabolism. And we've heard about rapid metabolizers, poor metabolizers. That's what they're talking about. So on your report, you'll see a gene on one side and then your genotype. And you're going to get one allele from dad, one allele from mom. And that's your special, unique genotype. And it's going to encode for you a special protein that has a job. And if it's a pharmacokinetic gene, it's going to lead to a protein that helps in metabolism of that specific medication, and so on and so on. There's a lot of genes on the report. For example, in Genomine, let's just pull one out. Well, I'm going to pull two out. One of them is BDNF. BDNF is very interesting. And I just talked to a patient today that had a certain variation that she was going to respond a little bit more potentially to exercise to help reduce her stress. And this is just based on the genetic study. The other one that is, if you look up pharmacogenetics, I guarantee the gene that's going to pop up for everybody is the MTHFR. But that gene is an important example of taking a step back, and when you get your report, diving a little bit deeper than the surface, because you'll have a recommendation on it and it will say something like, well, this person's maybe a 35% folic acid deficiency. You know, they're not going to have quite enough folic acid, and so they could supplement with L-methylfolate. Okay, so that's like an example of what you can get from that. But when you take a step back and consider, okay, this is a developing report, and we can't just take it at face value always. You have to consider the governing guidelines. So we all know what up-to-date is, and we get a lot of good information from that. You could think about it like an up-to-date for PGX. There's groups out there like CPIC is an example. And they're a group that's tried to compile a lot of research and decide what level of evidence they would recommend for these genes. So they all have a little level of evidence indicator. And the MTHFR is kind of in the middle. And so you have to kind of factor all that stuff in. And it sounds like it's maybe hard, but let me just tell you, you get your report in hand and you're like, what do I do with all this dynamics, kinetic stuff? And you can just click initially and say, let me just talk with an MSL who's going to run me through the whole thing until I feel comfortable to talk about it with my patient. So it becomes very easy that way.
You might not know this about me, but one of my most despised tasks as a clinician is charting. That's why I'm always searching for hacks, tools, and tactics to make charting more accurate, efficient, and less of a huge pain in the butt. If you too want to spend more time connecting with your patients and less time pointing, clicking, and typing into their chart, you should definitely check out Freed AI. Freed AI is a medical scribe on a mission to free clinicians everywhere from the purgatory that is writing notes. Freed AI listens, transcribes, and writes your medical documentation for you. You can even use the code PA50 for $50 off your first month with Freed AI. These notes are written in your style and done for you by the end of the visit. Can you imagine what it would feel like to leave work on time, notes done, without having to crack your laptop open in the evening? Freed is HIPAA compliant, completely secure, and it takes less than 30 seconds to learn. Get back to what you love doing, treating your patients, and let Freed AI do the rest. I feel like I should be getting CME credit for this episode because this is more than I knew about genes and pharmacokinetics before we started.
Sorry, you opened the box and I just jumped out. So
It's so cool. It's fascinating. I love this. And I do think we're sort of entering this era of medicine where patients are not willing to accept the status quo of let's just wait and see how you do or what happens, or make some general recommendations and see how you respond. So this to me is just something that patients are, with all of the technology and with all of the things that are developing, that people are going to start coming in looking for this and asking for this. So to the person listening who's like, now I want to know my own genes, or I want to offer this at my practice, and I'm wondering if anyone in my area is doing it. Is there a directory? Can we look it up? How do we know who is offering this and or where we can go to find those providers?
yeah, so that happened to me. Somebody came in on the schedule and I couldn't have been happier because it just said PGX testing. Now in Utah, it always says Genomind and they're great and I wouldn't put them down through Myriad, but I don't want to offend anybody, but Genomind is more detailed. So what you can do is if somebody wants to get this set up in practice, let's go from the provider side. I think what you do is you reach out, maybe do your own research on different groups and see who's around you. Genomind and like these other groups, Tempus, GeneSight, they're going to go anywhere, of course. But I would guide the provider to look at the sample reports, okay, and see which one you think you want to go for best, that looks the best to you. So kind of do some research, and you just have to reach out to them and get it set up and going for you. On the patient side, if you're like, oh yeah, I want to do this, what my recent patient did is they saw it on what's it called? One of the social medias. I can't remember which one she saw it on, but she's like, that's something I want to do. And so she looked up and searched on Google providers who do this. Luckily, I'm listed out there as one who does, and so she came just for that. So you can kind of sign up with the different groups and be a listed provider for PGX testing.
So I would love to wrap up this conversation by talking about something that I think is really one of the antidotes to burnout, and that is how to keep, or if you've lost it, how to get back that joy in practicing medicine. I have students that come into my office every Friday morning, and I see these kids because I'm getting old enough to call them kids. And I think I will never be this excited about medicine ever again, right? I've just seen too much. I know what's coming for them. But they are so energetic and they're so joyful and they're so happy to be out of the classroom and in the office with me. So it sounds like you were sort of on the brink and you brought yourself back to the place where you were really enjoying and having joy in medicine again. How did you do that?
Okay, so I think let's get these two out of the way super quick. Your overload and your pay. So to not talk about pay, I think is naive a little bit. If my work all of a sudden paid me $1 million, I'd probably do just about anything. So you do need to negotiate yourself. And if you're underpaid, that plays a factor, I think, because we want to be able to do things and feel valued, I guess. But pay is not everything, because when I hit that pivot point and my RVUs went so high, and it was very difficult then to um, further achieve, and I could have, if I keep pushing. I let that go. So I just let the RVU thing go. And the bonus of 50,000 post-tax, much less, is gone. And I could care less. So pay isn't everything, but it does help. So to negotiate yourself in a good way through your payment, I think does help people. So I'll just get that one out of the way. The other one to get out of the way really quick is your workload. And that, just because I'm trained this way, have a 2021 article. One of the top two things they mention for solutions to burnout is fixed workload, compensation methods, and then professional development. And I agree with all of those, and that fits in my box. So fix your workload. For me, it was a 5-day a week, 20 plus patients. That's what it looked like. And then you come in Monday morning, how much is in your inbox? Over 200 things, and they're from all over, and so many surgical notes. Just
Sorry.
just
At least they wrote the note. I mean, that's pretty good for a
at least they
surgeon.
sent it to me. So what I did is I went to a 4-day work week, longer appointments. I mean, and the workload just got so much better and more time. So those two things were important. The other two I would say is develop your personal interest. So I got my subspecialty of pharmacogenetics, or hereditary cancer risk screening. What is that thing where you currently are that you can implement? If you're in surgery and you just do shoulders all day, maybe you want to do something else, I don't know, with the sternum, and that's your special thing that you can do, and it brings it back for you. So I'd say find the subspecialty that you want. And then the fourth thing I think that helps a lot is, and we already talked about it, build your network. It helps a lot to have that cardiologist on hand when you're stressed to the wall and you're like, is this an MI that is reading on the ECG or not? And you get a quick consult, everything comes down, and you're good to go. So you build your network, and it can help people avoid burnout, probably like nothing else, because you're supported. So those are my kind of four, I think, that would help people a lot.
And it seems like you are. So I'm a little surprised to hear this because you're like, I live in the middle of nowhere. It's very rural, right? There's nothing around. And then you keep saying, like, my mentor, my connection, this person. Is that from LinkedIn that you are connected with all of these people?
No, they're not here, but they are around. So like this mentor guy I'm talking about, Mark, he's in Salt Lake. And Julie Eddington, she's in LinkedIn. You're in LinkedIn. And then these specialists are all on the other side of the mountain. But, I have their number, and they're so kind. And every once in a while, they'll come and visit me. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. Networking is something that when I was in like a new grad and I was first out in medicine, I thought networking was for business people. I thought it was not for me as someone who was working in healthcare. I was like, why would I need to network? I'm just going to get a job. I'm going to do the job. And then my current position I got because my surgeon watched me work with a different surgeon, and his kids were at my kids' daycare, and we would see each other all the time. And then we were in the same OR on the same day. And it was like the universe was just like, here he is, here I am, we're always together. And I was just talking to him the other week, and he was like, oh, I knew the second week that I saw you working with that surgeon that I would hire you. And I was like, I did. I didn't know that. Like, I was like, how did you know that? And he was like, yeah, I had this clocked. Like, I was thinking about ways I could get you into our practice. And I was like unbelievably flattered because he's a little stingy with praise, honestly. And also, I was like, oh, like that was networking, like me dropping off the kids at daycare at the same time as him and just saying hello and just being there and then sort of like stalking him towards the end when I was looking for a job. Like, those things were all networking in like a strange way. It's just really, really powerful.
It is, yeah, and just an expression of gratitude to people who are willing to do that. So and then you kind of turn back and look back. So when I was wanting to present at medical conferences, Viet is his name, and I think everybody in Utah must know who he is. He is amazing. He just connected. I'm just a total stranger. So you think about things like that, and then you kind of start looking back, and you have these students message you, and you just have to remember, I think, to then help them. Is very important. So
Yeah, so important. I mean, that is how we get here. That is how we pay it forward. And, for all the people that accept that high school student to shadow or tell someone what it's like to work in primary care or, give someone that phone call or that time, they then have the opportunity to pay it forward. It is like a never ending, way to contribute and give back. And all it costs us is our time, which is very valuable. And it's also valuable to them to give them that time and advice for sure.
good. Yeah, perfect. Totally agree.
Yeah. All right. So tell us where the best place for people who are like, I want to learn more. I want to set up a genetic clinic. I want to do these things in my practice. Where can we get more of Alex? Is LinkedIn the best place for them to go to connect with you?
Yeah, probably LinkedIn. I'm probably too responsive on there, so I will get back to you. But yeah, LinkedIn would be the way to go.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been just delightful. I have tons of notes. I will immediately Google providers in my area to see if I can go. I am a sucker for like anything that's tested, anything that's optimized. Sign me up for that. I want to know what's going on. So I am definitely the ideal patient for this. But thank you so much for sharing with us and for telling us all about this.
Yeah, thank you. So kind and loved it. So appreciate it a lot.
I love any conversation that reminds us that if we are feeling stuck and burned out and hopeless, that creating a plan and charting a course for something new inside of our careers that is going to lead us to other opportunities outside of practicing clinical medicine and showing up better for our patients in the places where they are is something that can give you hope and help to restore your joy. Also, if you have listened for any amount of time, you know that I'm here for any conversation about negotiation and compensation and improving your hours and dropping your days and increasing the length of your visits so that you can show up and connect really well with those patients as people. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to another episode of The PA is In. That's all for today. This PA is out. Congratulations. You've just joined an awesome club. By listening to a full episode of The PA is In, you are officially on the Unicorn PA team. Welcome aboard. What most team members do is they subscribe to the podcast because that allows them to automatically get the latest episode of the show. The life of your dreams exists on the other side of taking action. Keep making small shifts and keep getting better. Your life will improve, your career will soar, and you will have the confidence you need to create your own success. I will see you in the next episode. This PA is out.